All right, hey, it's February 2nd, bringing you a Lake Ozarks fishing report. A little bit of change here, in the last couple weeks. Obviously, the water temps creeping down just a little bit, but we've had just enough warm weather, warm, breezy days to keep that water up, the temperature up, hovering around, we're just going to say 40 degrees. Denise and I was out today. And it was about 39 degrees, I guess, 38, 39. Towards the end of the afternoon, we were upper 39s. So, it's going to just hover around there. Looking at the weather forecast, a couple cold days, but then several real nice days, 50s, 52 degrees, and a little bit of breeze. It just warms that surface temp up, warms that water, keeps it up there. Keeps it from freezing. Earlier this week, we had a little bit of ice in the backs, just starting to form when we had a couple real calm, cold nights, but it's pretty much, it's all broke up and dissipated by now. So, water level it's creeped up a little bit. It's 658.40. So it's only, we're going to say a foot and a half below full summer pool. So, but this time of year, we're usually hover around there. I would expect in the next, this 1st of February, so mid to late February, they'll start dropping it, for winter pool. So that should, usually probably 3 to 5 foot lower than where it's at right now. So I kind of look forward to that. It really bunches up the fish, a little more. As far as the banks, still the same type of banks, but it just kind of shrinks a lot of the steeper banks. They don't seem to roam as much. They just seem to tuck in tight, But that also kind of goes along with the water temperature getting down in the low to mid 30s too. So, we haven't gotten there yet. And because of that, the fishing is still fairly good. Bass fishing, we went out today, bass fish. We're going to fish the Bass and Bob this weekend out of Alhana. So we went out kind of pre-fishing for that a little bit. And had several bites, on the jig. The jig's been a better bite for us than like the stick baits. We're throwing stick baits some. And we're catching some fish, just not enough to keep me totally convinced that's what I need to be doing. Now, the conditions may change that. If it's real breezy or windy, I'll probably stick with the stick bait a lot more than like the jig or bottom bait. We caught a couple on stick bait today. I'm trying to think, maybe one small keeper on it. The jig, we got several bites. I didn't set the hook today, believe it or not, just because the bites are so far and few between right now. I just shake it. If I got a bite, I just kind of shook it until they let it go, and obviously made a note of where that was on this particular bank. I'll go back and try to catch them Saturday. That's just kind of how wintertime can get really tough. It's been really good, but we're going to start getting into those, just going to be some tough times in the winter, just when that water gets really cold like this. As it gets colder, it just seems to get pretty tough. We haven't seen it yet, but it's starting to get there. I seen it today compared to last week. The bite was real good last week. And then today it was quite a bit slower. So I kind of look for it to be pretty slow Saturday. Just where obviously we hope we're going to get 5 bites, 5 keeper bites. We'll catch fish, but we just hope we catch the right ones. But water clarity is really good right now throughout the lake. Pretty much. We haven't had anything to change that. One note I will say is I've noticed the last several days, generally we don't have a lot of current this time of year, but they've been kind of ramping about 3 to 5 hours a day. some in the morning, some in the evening. They'll ramp it up to, 19, 20,000 to 25,000 cubic foot, which is a decent amount of current. Does it do much to the fish? I don't know. I think if they run it a few hours, your shadow kind of move out, maybe in the deeper little, over the channel, right over the main channel, or in the creek channels, or even, in little like ditches or cuts, what we call them. I'm actually going to do a little second video for this week's fishing report, just highlighted on my map. I'm going to pull up my Garmin, my mapping, and kind of show you what we're looking for on the maps, and where we're catching different fish, whether it be the bass or crappie. We're still throwing both the stick baits, the jigs around steeper banks. Some days, 45 degrees, but the majority of the days that we're catching fish, and it seems like we're catching them better, they're on a little bit flatter banks. Maybe 30 degree, maybe just a slope, or maybe something with a little, like if you're talking from the bank coming out maybe 30 yards, it might be 8 foot, 10 foot, and then it comes out and then dumps off or rolls off into the channel. And them fish will come up out of that channel or come up out of that deep water and get up on that flatter stuff and feed on crawfish or maybe shad if they're up on there. So, those days, there's been some days we've been throwing like the Vision 110s or the Smithwicks or the Sixth Sense. It doesn't really matter, like we talked before, maybe more so the rattle or maybe some of the flash. But some days, like the 110, we'll throw it right up on the bank and twitch that thing down to where it's just about hitting them rocks, or just above them rocks. And if them fish are up on that kind of flatter stuff, they'll come up out of there and they'll hit these baits pretty quick off of the bank. You might only be 3 to 4 foot off of the bank. Like your first reel down, you stop it and let it sit there. Let it sit there for a little bit of time, and as soon as you twitch it, they're usually on it. So, and that happens a lot in the wintertime. For whatever reason, these fish will move right up tight to the bank some days. So you don't want to overlook that, regardless of the water temperature. We caught a couple today. Actually, it was a couple days ago, right off the bank like that. And we had been fishing a little too deep most of the day, and we moved up closer to the bank. And the fish were right up on the bank. So, you just kind of gotta feel it out each day. Throw right to the bank, and work your bait all the way out to your boat, and see if you don't get a bite or two that kind of will lead you to where these fish are at any particular day, or even by the hour. Early in the morning, midday, or late day. They'll change their positions, of where they're feeding. So just kind of play with that a little bit. Another bait, we've been throwing quite a bit here. I've been throwing a lot more this year. Is this Vision 110 +1, and it's got that deeper bill on it. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, but this one's kind of beat up on that bill. And what I really like about it is, like I was talking about, fishing those little flat ledges before they roll off into the deeper water. If you can reel this down to where it's hitting them rocks, in say 7 or 8 foot of water, and it's kind of bumping them rocks and sitting right there. A lot of times them fish, even them bottom fish, will come up just enough to hit that, or that disturbance will get them to react on it. So I've been playing with that a lot more this year, and it seems to be getting a lot more bites, letting that thing kind of root into that bottom and hit. Similar to, say, throwing a wiggle wart or a rock crawler, and digging it into the rocks. But that bait's you're usually continue to retrieve it, to where this one here, you'll hit the rocks and stop it and let it sit there in that strike zone just a little bit longer. So I think it kind of generates a few more bites sometimes. So, that's been fairly productive this year when they're on the stick bait bite. So obviously, You know, we always talk about the wind. You know, a lot of times that wind, sunny, windy days, the fish will come up in that water column just a little bit higher and more likely to probably hit the stick bait. Um, but then there's days things just don't make sense. It might be cloudy and slick, and they're up in the water column too. So today, while we were out, I will say we've seen more shad today than I've seen in a long time. I mean, giant schools of shad about probably half to 3/4 way back in some creeks, and just, I mean, hundreds, thousands of shad and fish. You can see the fish feeding on them. You know, probably bass, some crappie. We ended up, you know, about, I don't know, about 4 hours in, we couldn't take it anymore. The crappie were just, I mean, just hundreds of them today over to these shad, around close to the shad, and we started catching crappie. So I'll tell you about that here in a second. But you know, as far as the bottom baits, nothing new, nothing different when it comes to us. You know, the zapper jig, 3/8 ounce zapper jig, is just a natural Ozark crawl color with a green pumpkin red ring crawl on it, and you can see this one's spidered up. You know, low, small profile. You know, that jig, as far as a winter jig, the 3/8 ounce zapper, in my opinion, there's not a better jig out on the market. You know, I've been throwing that jig for 30 years. There's one right here. This is that same jig right here. You can see that it's the same jig. This is from 2010. I threw this jig and I won the Ever Start tournament down here, 3-day Ever Start in 2010. That's the exact same jig right there that I'm still throwing today. So if that tells you anything about it, it's just you know, the hook size it's a perfect size hook for the wintertime. It's a wire hook, which you know, is a little forgiving. If you don't get a good hook or you don't feel a real good bite, that number 4 wire hook in that is a really good sharp hook. I do carry a little, I just call it a little pencil sharpener. You know, it pops out of here. It's a little honing pad. It's got a little groove in the center. If I do dough up that hook or that point a little bit, you can push that in there and run that down, you know, that little sharpen pad just a little bit to get that thing. You want that needle sharp, just like that, to where you just kind of give it a little pull or lean, or if that fish picks that up and swims off with it just a little bit, that's all it's going to take to get it hooked enough that you can set the hook. So, you know, that little jig right there, if you don't want to get all crazy with jigs and stuff, just get you a 3/8 ounce Crocodile zapper jig and start dragging around and hopping around real slow, and I promise you, you're going to catch some fish. So that little bait, obviously the swamp bug, still throwing the swamp bug quite a bit, getting about equal bites. Swamp bug jig, I would say they need to be a little more aggressive, I guess, for whatever reason, for the swamp bug, just because there's a lot more movement, you know. But the swamp bug in either like moss candy or green pumpkin candy, I like it a lot. You know, that little bait, you know, like I said, when we designed it, when my brother designed this, he designed it for cold water, and this is the time of year it was designed for. So this is the time of year it shines. From now through, I'm gonna say, the 1st of April, we throw this swamp bug when things get tough and we gotta catch fish. We kind of rely on swamp bug. You know, obviously we talked about it last week. The new shorty worm from Crappie. This is a new product they come out with, kind of their version of a Ned rig, a little bit bigger, but it's got a little more action, a little more movement there. And you know, that's catching fish when it gets really, really tough, like it's about to get. A little shorty, you know, just rigged up on a spinning rod and reel with some braid, and then maybe some 8-pound fluorocarbon. You know, and like I said, I rig it on 1/4 ounce or 3/16 shaky football head, so I can poke that little point in there and I can bring it through brush, more rocks and stuff, but mainly the brush. As it gets colder and it gets tougher, these fish will probably start laying in that brush or relating to it a little more. We've been throwing the Wheezy jig. The Wheezy jig has a really stout weed guard in it, and if we're fishing a lot of brush or think the fish are in the brush, or you can see it on the live scope, the fish kind of moving around that brush, that Wheezy jig will tend to come through that brush just a little bit better. And you can throw that 3/8 ounce Wheezy jig down to about 15 foot. And if you're going to go deeper than that, I'd put that 5/8 ounce on. And even with the Wheezy jig, I do it just like all these other, like your regular zapper jig. Like here's your full jig, same one out of the package. Here's your spider jig. You can see it's a whole lot smaller profile. You can really trim it up, trim your ring crawl up, make it a real small bait just to get bites some days. You can leave it full, but I tend to, in the winter as it gets colder, always trim it down. Spread your weed guard way out. That way it compresses a little easier, gives you a little more protection, around brush and stuff. But that's just just in the wintertime, it just seems like you get a lot more bites when you really downsize. The Alabama rig, I really haven't been throwing the Alabama rig a lot. I'll be honest, I just really don't care to throw it. But I will throw it just because I can't help it. Sometimes you see suspended fish and you want to see if that's what they'll bite on. So I've been throwing a little bit. I've been catching a few fish on it. But it's just, sometimes it's just not what I'm really wanting to do. A little hard-headed, I guess. But, the Alabama rig, obviously, it will definitely catch fish, especially on windier days. I'll throw the Alabama rig when it's a little hard to feel the bottom, a small jig on the bottom. It gets pretty tough to feel the bite. So that's when I'm going to stick to the stick baits and the Alabama rig. Obviously, let's see, in the Bass and Bob, no Alabama rigs. Bass World Sports has a tournament this Sunday, no Alabama rigs. So if you're interested in tournaments without the Alabama rig, this weekend is your weekend because neither one allows the Alabama rig. So Bass World's a good group of guys. They'll be at PB2 on Sunday. So looks like the weather's going to be great. You might check that out. Come down Saturday, see how you're doing, jump in that one. Come fish Bass and Bob, or just come down and fish too. As far as the crappie is, I don't think, today Denise and I brought home 30 big crappie. I don't think the crappie can get any better than it is right now. Like I said, the water temp was 38 degrees today. We had just a little breeze. We found all these shad, and I'll show you on the map here on the second half of this report. But it basically was in about halfway back in the creek, and there was a little cove pocket. It had 3 little fingers coming down in it. So that's 3 ditches that came out in this little pocket. And then as they came out, then it dumped off into that main creek channel that went in there. And the shad were just piled in there. And then the crappie were in there with them. I mean, just hundreds of them. And the biggest thing today was we never caught a crappie off or under a dock today. These fish were all out in the center of these little ditches, and they were suspended from 8 foot down to about 15, 16 foot. I mean, a lot of them. And there was a definite line at 8 foot of water. That's where they started. They weren't above it. They were at 8 foot and below. So that tells me something's going on at 8 foot water temp, maybe oxygen, maybe the plankton. I'm not sure what it is. All I know is that there was a definite line at 8 foot, and we were catching them. Some of them, as soon as it hit, about that 8 foot mark, and we were bringing it across, they grab it, and some of them we let it sink down below, say 16 foot, and then we bring it up through it. It just depends on the retrieve or what kind of mood they're in. The baits we were throwing today, we were throwing 2 different baits. Obviously, we were throwing our old faithful, the old Kitech. Well, let's see, here we go. My Kitech, this little easy shiner, little 3-inch easy shiner. It's probably the best crappie bait, bar none, on this lake. We've caught more crappie on this bait throughout the year, the entire year, and right now they're still biting it. And we're rigging this on a little, we call it, it's called a screwing around. It's a heavy special poured over at Hook Solution over in Lincoln, Missouri, over there off of 65. You can go in there and ask for them special. Ask Dave, the owner in there, where his screwed around hooks are, and he'll know what I'm talking about. It's got a spring on it, coil spring, got a really good sickle hook on it. He makes several different sizes with the hooks in it. Like this one here, I've got this. This is the 3-inch that we throw so much here, but then I've also got a little 2-inch on a little smaller hook, same screwing around setup hook, but it's a little smaller one. When it gets tougher, sometimes they'll grab this little one compared to the 3-incher. So those are a must, because these Kitechs are so soft. They got that squid smell. They really smell. And I know when these fish, you can see them on the live scope following your bait, and they follow it. And I know after not too long, they can smell or taste that that squid on there. And it smells real and tastes real, and they're going to grab it. So that Kitech is a definite must. Now today, we caught several doing that, and this obviously you're retrieving it and moving it forward, so they're chasing it. But my great nephew made me some hair jigs, some hair crappie jigs, and we've used these years and years ago. But to deal with these are, same size head, 1/8 ounce or 1/8 or 1/16 ounce head, but that deer hair jig will fall real slow because it's almost kind of full of air, and you'll notice it just falls real slow, real subtle, and it kind of gets erratic, the way it moves. And we're dropping this down into the center of some of these bigger schools, and we caught several on the hair jig today. So I want to thank him for those. They worked real good today, and I look forward to using them a lot more. As things get tough. Also, these are really, really good for shooting docks. Obviously, it shoots in there real good, and then it will fall real slow, as it gets colder, even as that those crappie will get slower, and they won't go as far, they won't attack things as aggressively. So this hair jig will fall real slow down through them, staying right in front of their face, and causing them to react on it. So you may try to find you some hair jigs. Maybe check Bryant's or Edgar's or Fitz Fishing. I'm sure they have some. I'm going to see about maybe getting a few of them and putting them in some of these stores for him, just because they work so well. And there is definitely a time of year when a hair jig comes into play, and that's now when it's getting cold. So 6-pound test on your crappie rods and reels. I'm throwing several different styles. This is a fluger rod, a fluger reel for casting. It's about as good as any of them. This one's from Fitz's. You can go to Fitz's, any of the Fitz's, and get this set up here. Perfect setup for what we were doing today, just casting out in the middle. I've got other setups I use. This one here is this is an old reel. This old Tony Edgar rod. I use it for shooting. I've got it rigged up with an Okuma rod that I got up at Bryant's Osage Outdoors up here in Lori. He'll spool them up with you. Pick out the right right reel. This is probably my favorite reel. It's just super smooth. A nice reel when I'm shooting and things. You know, I'm a little more particular about what rods I'm using. I also have a B&M shooter that I use quite a bit. You know, your shooting rods have a little bit different action, a little heavier rod, so when you bow them back, that they'll really, you know, catapult and shoot your jig back in there to where you want it. Compared to just like casting out in open water like we were today, I think pretty much any rod, you know, say a 6-foot rod, spooled up with 6-pound test, try to cast past your fish where you're seeing them, cast it past and let it sink down. Just count it down, you know, count it down to where you see your fish, count it down to where it gets in about midway to them or just above them, and just reel that thing slow. I mean, really slow, and the fish will come up out there and just attack them baits. So, like I said, it was a little bit surprising today how many crappie were out in the open. It was bright, sunny day today, and they were out in the center of these little pockets. They were super easy to catch. We caught, like I said, we went through a lot of crappie today, but most of them were, I would say, 12 to 13 and a half inches. I mean, big, thick ones. And boy, we filleted a bunch up today. So, you know, other baits today, I'll be honest, we probably caught more bass today on this little 3-inch swim bait, that, you know, that little 3-inch easy shiner that we were throwing for crappie. We caught a lot of bass today on that thing, and a couple keepers too. So as it gets tough, these little swim baits like that, a little single swim bait can be really good. The little 3.5 Kitech on a little bigger head, you know, maybe on an 1/8 ounce head, get down a little deeper, can be really good. And then even the 3.8, little bigger one, maybe on a 3/8 ounce head, and just swimming that thing above those deep trees, them ledges, you know, just alongside these docks. A lot of times it'll pull them fish out. Just a single swim bait, as things get real tough, can be really good in the wintertime. So I'm sure Saturday we're going to go through all these baits, trying to figure out what the bite is or what we can do to get a bite. Obviously, I hope I can catch them on my jig and my swamp bug, but they may not bite it. May have to throw a stick bait or that little swim bait, you know, or maybe even a shorty this weekend just to get some bites. So that's what I'll be doing this weekend, and that's probably these baits, what I talked about today. That's what I'm going to be throwing from now until mid to late March, you know, as some other things will start coming into play. But these are your baits from now through, like I said, mid-March. Hopefully we continue to have some nice days, some nice weeks, and this water temperature stays right around 40, you know, 38, 40, and doesn't dip much lower than where we're at right now. That would be great for some of the early tournaments that we're going to have here this year. I know anglers in action, Ozark Mountain, are both like the first week of March. You know, if we don't have ice on the water in some places, I'll be kind of surprised. It usually those are really, really hard, difficult weekends to plan these tournaments early like that, just because of the potential of ice. But we'll see. I remember years back, a friend of mine, Mike Genowine, and I won a tournament down here, and we were literally throwing zapper jigs up on the ice that came out about 10 foot off of the bank, and we drug them jigs on the ice until it fell off, and when it went and hit to the bottom, we were catching fish. So the ice doesn't mean a whole lot. Them fish are still eating. They still need to eat. You know, of course, as it came off that ice and sunk down, it probably got down 10, 12 foot, and that's where we're getting our bites. That's about where the best bite's been here lately. I would say once you get 8 to 12 foot, that on the bottom, that's where the bite's been for us, at least for feeding fish. They've been up there and about like I said, 8 to 10 foot. Obviously, there's some fish going to be moving out deeper. There's some out deeper now, probably 18, 20 foot, 22 foot. That's where you're going to need a bigger jig, maybe a half-ounce zapper or that 5/8 ounce Wheezy jig. Just drag that thing. That Wheezy jig, you can drag that thing anywhere through any brush pile, whatever, rocks, and it's going to pop over it, come through it, and not get hung up. So if you're going out deeper, you want a heavier weight. Obviously, you got to be able to feel that jig, feel what it's doing, to feel when there's a little resistance or a fish has picked it up. So, I always say, from the bank out 12, 15 foot, I'm going with 3/8 ounce. If it's deeper than that, I'm gonna go to half, 5/8 ounce, so I can feel the bait. Unless it's windy, then you just kind of gotta play it. You want to throw as light as you can and still feel your bait. If you can't feel your bait, you're not gonna feel the fish. So, that's kind of what determines the weight of your jig you're gonna use. So, man, if you're in the mood and you want to come down and catch some crappie right now, give Denise or I a call. James Dill Guide Service, James and Denise Dill Guide Service. You can look us up on Google. Look us, just punch in James Dill Guide Service will come up. For Denise, you can give her a call at 314-226-3099. You can give me a call at 573-204-9005. We can put together a crappie trip for you. Right now, a 4-hour trip is sufficient to catch you plenty crappie, to have you a really good fish fry. I don't see it changing for a while right now at all. So it's not going to get any better than it is right now. Today was just a phenomenal day. And as far as the crappie population in this lake, we sat and we literally chased this school of hundreds of crappie across this creek and across this pocket. We kind of went around in circles. They just kept moving. The shad were underneath them, moving around, and them crappie were moving. As we'd catch a couple, they'd move a little bit, and with the live scope, we just stayed on them. We tried to keep them a good cast away. About 40 foot on the live scope is about where our jig was hitting, to keep from spooking them, or letting them know we were there. So we'd cast way out there and catch them fish like that. And we caught 30 of them big fish on the same school, and we never touched the amount of crappie that was there. It was just unbelievable, the amount. Denise has been out several times this week, and she's been fishing different areas and coming up with the exact same scenario. That's kind of what we did today. She was like, this is what I've been catching them, this is what I've been looking for. And we went out and kind of looked for that same thing in a different area today and just duplicated it, and it worked to perfection. So, with all that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and finish this up. But if you want to come out and catch some crappie now, or you want to go out and do some wintertime jig fishing or stick bait fishing right now, and this is dead of winter, if you can catch fish now, you can catch them any time in the year. So give us a call. We'll plan a trip. There's a lot of openings right now. We're really not that full, so we can plan a trip on, say, a Tuesday, and if the weather looks bad, we'll postpone it to Wednesday or Thursday or vice versa or something. We'll just work around and go out and make sure we have a good, enjoyable day. So, with that being said, until next time, I appreciate you tuning in. And right after this video stops and you play it, I'll post it as video 1 on this date, and then video 2, and I'm going to go through this map. So tune in to both of them, and we'll see you.